We're with Brett Dillon from IBS Advisors. Can you talk to us a little bit about the new changes as far as QA and how that's going to work, and whether there will be you anticipate logistical problems because of distance?
So the board has officially adopted policies regarding QA back in October. And what we've decided to do was, the policy is that QA has to be independent of the rating company, right? So there's not going to be anybody allowed to have any kind of financial entanglements with the rating company and perform the quality assurance work. That leads to a whole host of other changes and things that have to happen to the infrastructure behind that. So we've assembled some task force, some working groups to deal with both software changes in terms of QA, as well as dealing with the actual quality assurance process itself, so that we can end up with a standardized QA process that's going to deliver uniform QA across the board. In terms of logistics, this poses some really interesting questions because we don't know what the findings of this task force are going to end up being. What we suspect, or what I suspect, and this is just my opinion, is that there's going to be a fundamental shift away from any financial entanglement between the rating company and the quality assurance groups, so that what will happen is a different entity will be contracting the quality assurance over that rating company, whether it's software vendors or ResNet itself or some other entity will be directly contracting the quality assurance over those rating companies.
Do you think that might cause the rise of separate companies that just specialize in QA?
I absolutely anticipate that. That's the only way the market will be satisfied.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about combustion appliance testing.
Okay.
And I read some of the blogs and the LinkedIn stuff and so on, and one of the problems with it, at least for the people who said that we shouldn't do it, is that, or should modify it, is that sometimes you might have backdraft and sometimes you might not, depending upon external conditions and other things. Can you speak to, is there a way that we can do a foolproof combustion test in one shot?
I think there is. We actually, Lawrence Berkeley National Labs has been doing some really interesting work on combustion testing, and Dr. Ian Walker works at Lawrence Berkeley National Labs and serves on the Standards Development Committee that we're looking at these things. And there's a session at the conference this week where they're presenting some of their findings on simplified combustion appliance testing. And that becomes the real critical thing, because they've been able to identify exactly what we need to be looking at, which would totally simplify the process. And so I can't talk right now about some of the proposed amendments that are out for public comment right now because they're in a public comment period. So I can't address any of those, but a lot of these issues I can see going away as we move forward for a consolidation and harmonization with the ANSI standard process.
Great, that's good. Now, what's wrong with making sure they have a CO detector? That's probably a good idea, isn't it?
I think it's a mandatory idea. You should always have a CO detector. In fact, I think a CO alarm would be much better. Right. Don't just detect it.
Yeah. Sound the alarm, right. Okay, there's a new move to do simulation in several components, and I think that's a great thing. Could you talk a little bit about it? And do you see that maybe as a first step for allowing us to have one national test accepted in all states?
I think so. I'm a bit skeptical when it comes to computerized simulator exams, because I suffer from a particular ailment that renders me almost violently ill from just computer simulations. It's a rare thing, but it's there nonetheless. So I'm always skeptical, but I was able to go through the CAS simulator test. And if I can do it with my condition, I don't know why anybody else wouldn't be able to go through it, because I don't see any challenges with that. When we look at developing a standardized exam, we can't replicate in the field all of the conditions that you could possibly find, but with a simulator, you can. I would have to visit 12 to 15 houses, take students to 12 to 15 houses to go through everything that we could possibly have, and then there's the drive time and there's the time in the field. Where with a simulator in 2.5 hours, they could get exactly the same experience and see all of those things without any challenges at all. I mean, they're sitting there looking at their computer. It's not a substitute for taking them out in the field, but it's definitely an enhancement, because again, we can expose them to all these different things. They can get the process down, and really that's what simulator examinations are about. Do they understand that process? They still are going to have to go out in the field and demonstrate that they can do spatial manipulations of the equipment in the real world application, but simulator exams are I think going to be the key to delivering training in a very cost-effective way.
You know, from a kind of an X-rater standpoint, I never really understood the strengths and weaknesses and the differences between BPI leads and ResNet. But my perception was that ResNet was the only one that could really define a building's energy efficiency in terms of dollars and cents, and that's what their specialty was. This is kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
I see the new appraisal report that accommodates energy efficiency. On the first page, ResNet isn't even mentioned, and it's really kind of back in there, but they've got leads and they got BPI and what kind of green or whatever, and I wonder how you feel an appraiser would be equipped to interpret the green from the gold, from the silver, from the platinum, as it relates to dollars and cents. Sorry, that was such a long question.
No, that's fine. In fact, we've incorporated the appraisal addendum, the green appraisal addendum, into the software. So now that becomes an auto-generated value with the dollars and cents already plugged into it. So now we just hand that report, print it out, and hand that report directly to the appraiser, and they know exactly what dollars and cents they need to add into the report.
The thing that was bothering me was it had all this lead stuff and BPI stuff, and it never really talked about ResNet or HERS rating. And one of the ratings it said it could use was a HES, that 10-point
The home energy score. Yeah, so I'd like to address a couple of issues. One is that BPI announced today that they are producing a home energy rating system using DOE's home energy score for the state of Florida. And first of all, I think it's complete crap because the home energy score is a tool that the DOE has officially stated is designed for existing homes, only existing homes, and should not be used for new construction. Unfortunately, BPI, they fired their standards management board and canned it in its entirety last year after their standards management board found that BPI had violated the ANSI process. ACA had filed a complaint against them. BPI's standards management board agreed that ACA was in fact correct. They had violated the due process and public comment reconciliation. And so the BPI board reacted by firing the entire standards management board, eliminated it from their policy and procedures manual, and replaced it with just their standards development committee and staff, which actually is a violation of ANSI essential requirements. And then they turn around and they're going to latch on to a rating system that is designed specifically for existing homes. And they're going to apply this to new homes. And this is funded by the Department of Energy. This is funded by, in fact, a member of the board of directors of BPI is the guy in charge at the Department of Energy for funding that program. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, and I think it's total crap that BPI is going to do something like this. There's an ANSI standard there's shortly, within the next 2 weeks, going to be an ANSI standard for calculating an energy rating index, which is what the code in the 2015 code cycle references, an energy rating index. The home energy score is not an energy rating index and does not comply with that code requirement from the International Code Council in the 2015 IECC.
And yet it's part
and
of
yet the state of Florida has said this is okay because
the appraisers are going to use
the appraisers may potentially use it.
Where do you see ResNet going in the future? I had high hopes that ResNet was going to be the key financial element since it was born of the Mortgage Bankers Association in doing all types of loans and quantifying it. Where do you think, are we headed in that direction?
We are, in fact, speeding in that direction. We are working very diligently with the banking institutions to get the HERS index as part of the financial package for energy efficient mortgages, as far as regular mortgages. We have high hopes that the SAVE Act, if Shaheen Portman passes in the Senate, then the SAVE Act passes because it's part of that bill itself. There's a strong likelihood that even if Shaheen Portman doesn't get through Congress in its entirety, that the president can, by signature, put that into place, because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are in the receivership to the U.S. taxpayers.
I suspect that we've got a good chance at that passing, but I also suspect it's going to be 2 or 3 years before the mortgage products get refined and hit the marketplace.
You're probably right about that, in terms of that. On the other hand, we also have, in terms of existing homes, we're working on some really interesting financial instruments that will be able to provide financing for consumers to do upgrades for energy efficiency that are related to their HERS index, and getting all of that, including the application process, incorporated into the software.
Well, you know my feeling about that. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we can use the FHA programs that are in existence now. But that sometimes is a problem too, because FHA has changed its regulations, and they're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, Brett, I really appreciate your time. I know you got something to go to, and it's been a pleasure seeing you again.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.